Welcome back to another episode of the Easy Button Real Estate Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Cole Ruud-Johnson. We have Tucker Merrihew back on the mic today as well. Tucker, it's been, I think, two and a half weeks since we recorded a show. How is September treating you so far? How was the end of August? What's going on in your world?
Labor Day weekend was cool. We had to reschedule, which is why we didn't record last week, but I got to go over to a place called Stuart, Florida, which is on the east coast of Florida. And we rented a house with a couple other couples that was right on the water. And then one of the couples, their son works on the docks there and manages a bunch of a boat fleet. So he got us a boat one day, and it was cool. But the thing I've said before about Florida, and I'll say it again, is that every place has a different flavor, right? No matter where you go. And so it's been cool to kind of go to these different places and kind of experience this different flavor. But weather was fantastic, so it was awesome. As far as like on the real estate front goes, we've got, I would say September's probably our slowest month here in terms of people coming for vacationing. So our vacation rental occupancy this month is lower than I would like, but there's always 1 month a year where it's, pretty poor. And this is the month, but mainly that it correlates very heavily with peak of hurricane season. So I can't say that I blame people. There's a storm out there right now that they're watching. We don't know where it's going to go, but the news loves to really dramatize hurricanes so that it can get people's eyeballs on the West Coast that have never been through a hurricane. They're like, oh my God, it's going to destroy the world. So, maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't. But September is generally when we see most of the hurricane activity around here. But other than that, things are good. We're hopefully today or Monday, we'll have our building permit for our new big new construction that we're going to be starting. And we can hit the ground running with that. We got everything ready to go. So we're just kind of waiting on the city on that front. But other than that, it's been a good couple of weeks. What about yourself?
When do you think that that build will be done? Like end to end from when you bought it to when you'll sell it out? What is that time frame?
Generally, we would be like 10 months probably if we were in a municipality that we had done stuff before. And I'll kind of extrapolate a little bit on that. So if you buy a vacant lot, it's a little easier. Like you have to create plans, but if you're not building like, over and over and over the same plans, what kind of like a conveyor belt builder would in a neighborhood or something like that, you basically have to create a new plan every time you buy a new lot because every infill lot's a little bit different in terms of size and depth and road frontage. And so you've got to be able to create plans, get those plans approved, get your building permit. And so going back and forth with architects to kind of create new plans and then redline them and tweak them, depending on which architect you work with, that can take a long time. It can take a short time. So, and then the other curveball is there a house on the lot that you bought that you're going to tear down? And so then you got to go through the process of tearing that down and clearing the lot as well. So I think in this case, we'll probably be maybe 15 months, 16 months from purchase. So we were probably, 5 or 6 months behind schedule what we would have been in the Northwest with all the, the people that we had and the connections that we had. So, but this was also the first time we built within the city of Naples and not just Collier County. So I knew there'd be some back and forth, and it's been, a bit of a learning curve, like I've said before.
And you slowed it down a little bit on purpose, right? Too.
And I think that was the right decision. I've seen a lot of chatter on, interest rates, the 10-year bond rates have been coming down this week, at least the last day or two anyway. And it looks like the Fed's going to cut rates on their September 16th meeting. So there's definitely an influx of buyer activity. I know on the West Coast for sure, in our old market in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot more people kind of looking, writing. Here, there's definitely been a bump compared to what it was. So I think as that kind of continues forward, this kind of slow playing it just a little bit, it'll have a big impact. I mean, ultimately, I think the swing on the house we're building, it could be, probably $800,000, maybe $1 million, one way or the other, depending on market conditions. And so,
big swing.
If you think about it like that, it's like, well, is it worth it to drag your feet a little bit, a few more months to have such a dramatic swing? And that's the way the real estate market works here in Florida too. It's, it's a big roller coaster. It goes like this. And so timing is super important here, much more so than I would say in the Pacific Northwest.
Massive swing. Well, on my end, not a lot is different. It's been we call this time of year in San Diego, we call it local summer because really end of August through end of October, because all the Arizonians leave that take shelter out here from the 125 degree summer, and the beaches are empty. streets are empty, no more traffic getting in and out of the beach, but it's the best weather of the year. The water's the warmest, weather's the most consistent, and there's no one here. So it's kind of, it's my favorite time of year here, where every day is, even right at the beach, every day is 81, 82, very little wind. And you kind of get the city back from all the summer crowd. So I
That's
like
like
it.
May. That's like May in Naples, right?
Yeah.
All of tourists are gone. The beaches are empty. Traffic is gone. It's a great time. Definitely.
Yeah, it's my favorite time. So that's been good. Just kind of laying low and sticking in the office, getting golf in here or there. But yeah, not a lot. Not kind of longest season without a lot of travel in a while, which is nice to kind of anchor down and get caught up on stuff and work with the team and all that jazz. So yeah, things are moving forward. Well, today's show, you guys out there that listen, again, Tucker and I go into just real questions that we get from the audience, whether it be on a live community call or we have a Q&A channel in our community that they send in. And I think the place I want to start today is something that I think every experienced entrepreneur, whatever you want to call experienced, has tried at least in their career. And I came up on a call this week where someone was trying to make their first salesperson hire. And his comment to me was, "Hey, I have a few family members that I could bring into this role." And we have quite a few clients that over at least the course that I've worked with them, have done the same thing. They made a role for a family member. They brought in a family member, and I've done that amongst a lot of people out there listening. So that's the first question, Tucker. I'll kick to you is, if you are going to engage a family member in hiring them for a role in your business, what is there a right way to do that? And my advice to him on the call, I'll get into after you. I want to hear you first, not me biasing your opinion, but that was the first thing that came up.
Yeah, that's a big loaded question. I'll preface what I'm going to say with, I have worked with my wife since she got laid off from a production builder in beginning 2008. And she came to work with me after that. So it's been, what's that, 17 years, 18 years almost. So that's worked. Has it been easy all the time? No. She wanted to kill me sometimes. Yes. If I wanted to kill her, yes. But that's just the way it's going to work with anybody, and being married, of course. Now that aside, if you're not in business in some capacity with your spouse, or that they're not involved in the business in some way, if you're hiring like a brother, a sister, a cousin, something along those lines, that can get tough. And I did it at the beginning of my career, and it failed miserably. Not necessarily because of anything that I did, but it's so challenging because you hire people who think that they don't necessarily have to be the hardest worker, or they don't have to overachieve, or they don't have to try and really please the boss or be great in the role. And some people will be, but because there's that innate feeling that most people have, I truly believe that it sets it up for failure. And ultimately that's what happened. And it ended up causing it's a longer story, I won't get into it, but it ended up causing a much bigger rift, family dynamic moving forward, and still to this day. So my answer is, I would be very, very careful hiring family, because it's way easier to fire somebody that's not family than it is somebody that is family. Cause then you got to see them at Thanksgiving and Christmas and, birthdays and stuff like that. And then that just gets weird and difficult. Right. So I think people do it because it seems like the easy thing to do. I did it because my mom begged me to do it, and I said, okay, but I wouldn't, just because it's the easy thing, or, you're like, oh, my, whatever needs a job, I think they'd be good. I don't think that's nearly enough to say yes. So I'm very adverse to hiring anybody family related, even though I have worked with my wife for 17 or 18 years. I just don't think it's a great idea. But I'd be curious what you think.
I've worked with a family, and I've also worked with a lot of friends, and I kind of put them in similar buckets at this point, where I think it's really hard to separate the person from the role, if it's a family or a friend. And you're not going to objectively look at their performance as you would someone else. And it can create a lot of dissent in your organization, your culture, if you have other people as well, because they're going to look at that person as, oh, they're getting handouts, whatever it may be. And a lot of times you're going to end up paying friends and family more because you want to see them win. And it's very hard to unwind right? Try going to a family member and telling them instead of paying them 20 grand this month, you got to go down to 12 grand because it's just not making sense for the business. Good luck. Good luck having, no matter how logical you think the other person is, good luck having that and then showing up to the next, family event, family dinner with it being peaceful. So, I mean, it's hard. And you spend so much time with those people as well. You know them, you know how to press their buttons. They know how to press your buttons. There's just a lot that can go wrong, with friends and family. And most of the friends that I've hired, by the time that we're done working together, the friendship's different. No matter how much I want it not to be, no matter how much they want it not to be, the objective truth is like, you're not going to be as close. Things are going to be weird and probably a lot of times never go back to normal. And so that is and also skews the dynamic of the friendship because now you're in like a power role in the relationship. So I have a friend working for us right now at Easy Button, Tyler. But he didn't start as a friend. He started as a consulting client and then became a friend. And then went and built his business, then came and worked for us. But we've always had a relationship where I was either his consultant or we were in business together, and then I became a friend from that. But what I would say is if you're going to do it, make sure you treat it like you would anyone else. You have a very clear separation of the role from the person. And you just go in knowing that it's not going to be the same when it ends. That's just, I think, the reality of it. I worked with my wife for a few years too. And that was great in compared to other family members I've worked with and friends that I've worked with. But it still created a dynamic that I didn't love. Like I didn't love having to give marching orders business wise to my wife. It just wasn't fun. And there's a recent example of this. I'll leave names out of someone that is big in the real estate industry and got engaged and made his fiance his assistant and had her doing emails, traveling, bookkeeping, scheduling. And she dropped the ball so bad on that stuff that obviously he let her go and ended up putting the relationship in such a bad spot. It separated. And I think that that's an example of how that can play out if you're not careful. So my advice on the call for you guys, if you're curious, was leaning in the direction of probably don't do it. And if you do it, just have an understanding that you're probably going, especially if it's your first time, you're probably going to screw it up pretty good.
Yeah, that is true. No question about that. I mean, I would even lump in like friends, significant others, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because back at the beginning of my career, and this wasn't my fault, but I had, obviously a mortgage company prior to, going full bore into the development side. And my best friend at the time, his live-in girlfriend needed a job. So I had hired her. She worked for me for about a year. Well, then 2007 hit and the mortgage market just started to implode. And I remember I had to fire her one Monday morning, or I had to let her go because the world was basically collapsing. And she was throwing shit at me. She was so mad, but she was younger too. She couldn't quite understand everything that was at play, but I couldn't support her salary. I mean, we were going into just a really tough time. Fast forward, and the whole reason I'm saying this is because that then changed the friendship dynamic that I had with one of my best friends forever, right? And I wish it hadn't. And it wasn't anything that I did necessarily other than just trying to survive as a self-employed person. And sometimes you just have to do those things. You have to close up shop. You got to close business. You got to reopen business. You got to let people go. And it's a lot easier to do that when you don't have these kind of relationships, right around you or close to you, that, you would like to preserve and improve as time goes on and not have them implode on you. And so I would say just find other people. Some of the best hires that I've ever made, Dan works for us now at Easy Button.
Sure.
He was completely random. We found him and he's been one of the greatest hires that I've ever made, on multiple levels. And so you just got to put in a little more work and you'll find the person you want to find. It just seems easy sometimes to hire your friend, your friend's girlfriend, or your family member or whatever. And it's I would say don't do it. But, sometimes people got to learn on their own. So.
And a lot of people say that it's oh no, it's my heart's in a good place. I'm trying to do a kind of thing. And a lot of times when I want to ask the question, is it, or is it a weird ego thing for some people of oh, look at me, I'm the big boss. I can hire friends and family and write checks. I feel like a lot of people,
It
it's
might
hard.
be both. Yeah. I don't know. Either way, it's a bad decision. So
It doesn't change that. One of the things you said there too, before we move on to the next topic, is with Dan specifically. If you guys don't know Dan, he's worked for Tucker for a long time and he's our head of operations at Easy Button. He's a super talented guy. I I think the thing that worked with you guys is he came in as an employee, if I have it correctly, and then a friendship came of that. But the dynamic was always kind of business first, and then I feel like the friendship's a little more insulated because it was something that grew off the business dynamic instead of, it was a friend dynamic that then became business. I have that correct, right?
Yeah, I mean, we basically we were on the ship together trying not to sink forever, right? Like, so you're kind of going to battle together every day, and then the friendship is built out of that versus your friendship or relationship, and then you gotta go to battle, right? Like, you don't know if that's gonna work, and so, yeah, that's exactly right. We was employee first, and then, over what has it been? 17 years? No, yeah, 12 years, sorry. Maybe 13 years. Obviously, we built a great friendship out of that as well. So that's the best way to do it, I think. And that's the way those friendships survive and sustain long term, which, is really what you want. If you're going to build a business and kind of have people around you and ultimately just, maintain contact with, great people that come in and out of your organization.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely the dynamic that's worked for me. Like I talked about with Tyler, who works for us now too. I want to take one other direction. I think it's kind of a spin off of this is the kind of psychological battle warfare the business is. Right now it's hard. And a lot of the guys that get on our community calls, even if they're experienced, are just in a kind of rougher, I would say, mental place than they have been in a long time. At least that's my takeaway. I would say you have a pretty good level head when it comes to business. I feel like I've gotten there or am headed that direction. What is your overall, let me ask this in a simple way. What is your overall kind of perspective of not the market right now, but how to deal with, especially for people in real estate, what kind of psychological frame do they have to develop to be in this business for a couple decades, which is really where you make the money. You don't make the money doing this 5 years. You can make some money, but for people that want to last their second, third decade, what is the psychological frame you have to develop? Not, to be in business too, but specifically in the real estate world.
I mean, I think first and foremost, you have to kind of develop, and you do this really well also, but you have to develop a very even keel type attitude throughout the days, right? Of course, you want to celebrate your wins, you want to bitch and moan about your losses, but I always try and mute both slightly, right? So that you kind of stay in a more of a middle track. And that's not to say don't enjoy things when they're good or, worry. You're always going to worry when things are bad. But you can't ride this giant emotional roller coaster, and you get better at that with time. That's for sure. And it's easier said than done, but that's probably the biggest thing. Cause if you let your emotions get the best of you, what is it? One of my favorite quotes from Axl Rose, one of his songs, he goes, "Worrying is a waste of my fucking time." Right. And, now can we not worry ever? No, it's not possible. But, most of the time when we're worrying, whatever we're worrying about isn't necessarily going to happen or play out exactly the way that we think it is, which is creating a lot of that worry and angst and anxiety and whatever. So, you got to try and just not let everything eat you up. Cause that's important, but that's for anything entrepreneurial, right? That's why some people just can't make it behind door number 2, right? Now, I think more people can than they give themselves credit for, because it's like a muscle you got to work over time, and you just get better and better at it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, we've talked about this before, just get up and go to work every day. If you do that, most of the problems you're worried about aren't going to happen. And most of the time, everything will work itself out. And you may not be able to map it out and be this is what's going to happen in the next year. If I go to work every day and it seems like it's a little dark right now, but generally, if you put in effort day in and day out, you'll figure out a way, and things will work out, or things will slingshot back. And when they do, you're positioned properly to take full advantage of whatever it is, right? But that's always been kind of my prescription to myself whenever it's a really challenging time, is just get your ass up, get to the office, do the work, and it'll work out.
Yeah, I'd say one of the favorite frames on this that I've taken is I listened to a CEO of a $20 million a year company talk about this, and he was like, "I'm really glad that I don't have a $100 million company yet." He's like, because the money would be nice, but the rest of it, I'm not ready for yet. Because I think that realistically, on paper, you could jump from building a house to then building a 16-unit apartment complex mathematically on paper. But I think stress resiliency is something when you go to the gym and you lift one day, you don't get results after your third lift. It's like you're 2 years in, you've lifted 3 times a week. You're like, oh, I look a lot different. I think that's like stress resiliency is you have to get kicked in the face for long enough to like eventually the kick that bothered you 2 years ago doesn't really take up space in your head. And that's the way I think about it for myself is like, it's a bandwidth thing you have to build. And a lot of lottery, I believe like the reason a lot of lottery winners go broke, a lot of athletes go broke, a lot of entrepreneurs implode. You've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. Suicide, addiction, divorce, death, all the things that can come with it is because they take a massive leap before their resiliency to stress and overwhelm is at that point yet. And I think that's the dangerous part. And then for the frame that's always helped me is just kind of realizing for myself that it's a bad shit happening is kind of a feature of when you sign up for entrepreneurship. It's not a bug. It's not something going wrong. It's like literally what's supposed to happen because you get paid by solving really big problems. When you solve really big problems, it's hard and difficult. So I think for all of you guys out there, the one thing, Tucker, that I'll double click on the most is the part of it being a muscle. And you're not going to wake up and have the same mindset as someone that's been doing it for 2 decades. But you get there, like you said, by just showing up to the office. And that comes up a lot on our community calls is I can see in people's eyes where they're 2 years into business and they show up at the call and I can tell they had a rough week and they're drained and they didn't sleep well. And it's that's all the rite of passage. It's part of, I feel like it's like whatever you believe in, it's like the universe's way of being like, oh, you really want to be in business for yourself? Okay, well, here's all this bullshit. Let's see if you really mean it. So that's kind of my breakdown of it.
And keep in mind too, like a lot of the guys that get into real estate, they're younger, right? So like, if they're 20 something, early 20s, even late 20s, early 30s, and especially if it's their first like entrepreneurial run, like it's supposed to beat the shit out of you sometimes. Like that's a given, right? Like that's not a maybe not. Like it's a given. You're going to get beat up a lot of days. And so they just have to kind of lean into that a little bit too and embrace it and just understand that that's part of the process. But again, that's kind of working that muscle and you start to understand these things as time goes on. It's kind of like, I like to equate it to like your financial IQ, right? Like if you were, saved $2,000 your whole life and then you inherited $2 million from some family member that died from some far off land, like you don't have the financial IQ to really manage that money or use that money as a tool. You probably ended up blowing it in 2 years and you're back to $2,000 in your bank account, right? So like it takes time to build your financial IQ and get comfortable with managing more and more money, just like it does with managing more and more stress. And that's kind of goes to the point of what your guy said that, he said he'd love the $100 million a year company, but he probably doesn't have the financial IQ to manage that money yet. And he doesn't have the emotional IQ to manage everything else that comes along with it in terms of stresses and people pulling at you and all those different things.
That was very well put. Well, you guys, before we wrap the show today, I have an announcement. Yesterday, we released version 3.0 of our off-market method, our community. It's pretty badass what's in there now. So if you guys want to check that out, there's a couple weekly calls, a really good Q&A section, a really good classroom journey. And it's really for you guys out there that whether you're chasing your first deal or chasing your 200th deal to really kind of systemize your off-market acquisition efforts. So the link to check that out is below. And as always, you guys, the show's grown tremendously over the past few months. We only grow through word of mouth, you telling your friends and our organic audience. So if you think the show would be valuable to someone, let them know. Reach out if you guys want to see a certain topic, jump in our community and tell me on the live calls. Like a lot of people do, or ask questions because those will get on the show. And wherever you listen to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave us a review. A lot of you guys have done that recently. It's huge. And until next time, you are only one deal away.